Well, welcome everyone to Dementia Chats. We're going to have a great conversation today. And before we get into that discussion, I always like to have everybody introduce themselves, which we will do here shortly. I'm Lori LeBay. I'm the founder of Alzheimer's Speaks. My mom had dementia for 30 years. And for me, it was life-changing. And I just really, truly believe that it's critical to raise the voices of those diagnosed because they have brilliant insights, which you're going to hear today. But before I have them introduce themselves, I have to give a plug if you need to go buy stamps. So everybody run out and get your Alzheimer's stamps and help support the cause. Two women pushed that through. They were just absolutely hound dogs at this thing. I mean, they were not going to let go of their grip until they got that thing passed through. So that's pretty exciting. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go around and have everybody introduce themselves. And Mary, I'm going to go ahead and start with you, if you wouldn't mind giving people just a little background on yourself.
My name is Mary, and I have subcortical leukoencephalopathy. It's a rare form of one of the leukodystrophies. I've had it for about 12 years, and I have a little service dog, and his name is Benji.
Can you give people just like a couple of symptoms of what you have? Because a lot of people aren't familiar with that diagnosis.
Okay, well, I have the kind of dementia where you don't necessarily forget things, you remember things differently, you confuse things, and you tend to be very sure that you've got information straight, but in fact you've mixed it up with other information. There's disorientation and some executive motor skill, executive functions like being able to do your balance your checkbook and numbers and calculate budgets and things, like a lot of the other dementias have, but there's that mixing up thing also.
Okay, great, thank you. Michael?
First of all, I'd just like to say, in reference to your stamp, it takes persistence. They worked at it for 17 years.
Wow.
So it gives you an idea how much effort it took, but they finally got it through.
Well, I didn't realize it was quite that long. I was thinking it was like 7, and I thought that was a long time.
When they started doing that, people were actually buying stamps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure it's still happening. But anyway, my name's Michael Ellenbogen. I'm an international dementia advocate, and I have some type of dementia. You'll have to spin the wheel and figure out what kind, because I don't know.
Thank you, Michael. True?
My full legal name is Truthful, Loving Kindness. My current diagnosis is mild cognitive impairment because it doesn't fit in the box for any of the general ones, because the decline is definite decline, but it's extremely slow.
Okay, great. Bob?
Name is Bob Savage. I live in Plantsville, Connecticut. I received my diagnosis almost a year and a half ago, and it was early stages of vernacular disease and also as well as Alzheimer's, and it's been continuing to progress very slowly. I'm very happy.
Wonderful.
I'm an advocate, and I do a lot of public speaking.
Thank you. Brian?
Hi, I'm Brian LeBlanc. I'm 57 years old. I was diagnosed in October of 2014 with Alzheimer's disease. I'm 4th generation of having that disease, and I'm an international dementia advocate, and I speak wherever I am asked to do so.
Okay. Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Drevs from Wisconsin. I'm 52 years old. I was diagnosed when I was 45. My grandfather and my uncle both died fairly young from this disease. That's my story.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Harry? What we're going to discuss today is really about trying to give hope, insights, and power back to those, especially who are early diagnosed. There's a lot of communication tips out there for care partners, but today we want to focus on what the person with dementia can do in terms of their communication, because a lot of times things can get misinterpreted. Feelings can become really strong, conversations can get heated, and how do we adjust as a person living with dementia in these situations? Because communication is 99% of who we are and what we do. And so how can we continue to do it better once diagnosed? So this was Bob's idea. So Bob, I'm going to have you go ahead and kick this off.
I noticed from the first time that I say we, the caregiver and the person with dementia got the diagnosis, because it affects both of us almost equally. My wife is from the point of fear of what she might have to give up or what she has to do. And my fear is, my God, how soon is it going to happen? And as a result of that, in trying to talk through fear is extremely difficult. And what I found was, while my wife was trying to help me and reminding me what I was doing that showed some symptoms of moving forward, I got very angry because I didn't want to hear it, because that meant that I was progressing. And so we went on for 6 months like that, and it was terrible. What we're trying to do is, how can we set up a communication pattern between the caregiver and the person with Alzheimer's, where we both realize we're trying to help each other through the process and try to remain some sense of being calm. And that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's very difficult. And that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, great. Mary, you had some thoughts on this, how you can still adapt and learn to communicate in different ways. What kind of tips do you have?
Well, I don't know that I have any solutions, but I do know that it's true that we can still learn how to communicate better. And just as importantly, we can relearn what we might have been able to do when we were younger. So if we were particularly attentive to our care partner or children or anyone around us, I don't know who the onus is on to actually reteach us, but if we could reteach ourselves, that would be nice. But you help us do that a lot by creating an environment in which we have to communicate socially and politely and respectfully, and yet still be ourselves. So a big part of it is actually creating an environment in which we're comfortable and not stressed out, and where we're not really under any pressure to immediately make a quick decision, where we can be in our natural setting, where we're not in a hurry, and where if we stutter or make mistakes when we're talking, someone isn't there rolling their eyes or, all those facial expressions that indicate that, come on, get on with it, get on with it. Mm-hmm. So that's just a few of the things that I notice about being in a comfortable environment, and that I would want someone to actually tell me when I'm screwing up and when I'm messing up the communication. I want to be told, because I want to learn how to do it better. I'm not sure how that's going to happen.
Okay, before I go to True, Mary, is there a way that you would like someone to approach you on that? Because I think sometimes it's the approach or the way somebody says something, that can trigger kind of some anger or a feeling of disrespect.
Let's talk about that. I don't know exactly. I don't have that. I don't know that I have the one answer. And of course, we're all different. So we would all want it different. But just asking the question is the biggest part of it. So if everybody that is a caregiver learned how to just ask that very question, I think we'd be way, way, way ahead.
Okay, good. True?
I think one of the first things that we can do is talk about our needs in an environment that facilitate communication, as in before our Thanksgiving dinner, I talked to the daughter, and I said, my dementia symptoms have gotten worse. Thank you very much for making sure that the television has been off, but I also need the radio off, and I'm not going to be able to spend much time with the kids and everybody all in the same room. So I need you to know that my time boundaries are like 45 minutes to an hour now, is for being in this kind of a group of people with children. So giving those kind of environmental cues ahead of time so that the conversations or any communication that happens later on is set up in a healthy way.
Yeah, I think that that's really important in letting them know why. Not just, sometimes we approach things of, we'll just turn the radio off, and someone's like, well, no, I want the music on, so letting them know exactly why that's important to you. And like you said, doing it ahead of time so that everybody can be on the same page. So it's not, oh gosh, now I got to go run and do that. Or, if somebody's hosting something and they're frazzled and, running behind or something. So that's a really respectful way to do that, setting that up front, those expectations. And
also putting in whenever possible that you did good in the past. I really appreciate you turning off the television when I'm coming. Yeah. I've noticed that, and I appreciate it. Putting in that at the same time as I'm putting in my requests for the environment that is coming up.
Yeah, very good. Brian, you're shaking your head over there. What are your thoughts?
I'm just always shaking my head. One of I guess the affirmation, like True was just saying, when you do something good, I don't like relating it to when a dog does a good thing, they get a treat. But when we do things, correctly, for a lack of term, it's nice to say or to hear some sort of confirmation. I was saying to all of you before that to have someone start a conversation with you by saying, I know you don't remember, but, and then they'll tell you something, and in your mind you're thinking, I remember that. I might not remember it in the same way that you're saying it now, but I remember what you said. But it's a double-edged sword, because even though when they're saying it, it sparks something up here, recalling it on your own is sometimes very difficult. Mm-hmm. And then what Bob was saying, I can also relate, because I do tend to lash out sometimes, because look, living with this disease it ain't easy. It's difficult on so many levels, but it's what you make of it. You can make it hard on yourself, or you can try to live the best life you possibly can. I've chosen to live the best life I possibly can. And then with getting affirmation that, hey, you're doing really well, and then you get, well, you don't look like you have Alzheimer's, but it's just different things, like it helps. And so from a caregiver point of view, or from our point of view, when it comes to conversations, listen to to what we were asking. Like, true, with turning off the television, knock off the distractions. I can't handle background noises and so forth. And don't start your conversations with a negative. Instead, just say, hey, I just wanted to remind you that blah, 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 blah. Saying I wanted to remind you instead of saying I know you don't remember, but makes all the difference in the world. And it just helps.
Well, I think, one of the things that would be really difficult, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you guys are well aware of your losses, and way more, I think, than even a care partner notices. And so when you're reminded of that, it's just like, really? I can see where that's going. And I don't want to focus too much on having the caregiver change, because our focus today is really on what can you do. But would it make sense, or have you, Brian, or others, told the person, can you not start out with that in terms of having a conversation, because that triggers frustration for me. I'm well aware of the deficits of this disease and how it impacts me. And, for us to continue, to communicate, it would be really helpful for me if you didn't start the conversation off like that.
Yeah, that kind of, depending upon how it's phrased, you could say, could you please not start a conversation like that, instead of, why do you always have to start a conversation like that? Yeah. You're going to get two different responses from doing that. And I've done both. Mm-hmm. But yes, the nice, kind question is gets a more of a positive response than the other does. And sometimes just sitting down and explaining, because look, there are books for caregivers that are out there right now, but there is no book that tells you exactly this is what a caregiver, a care partner must do, or follow this to the letter, because each situation is so different. So you're going to get different reactions from different people. But a kind response usually has a better reaction than a negative one.
Oh, go ahead, Mary.
On just to piggyback on that, I think one of the things that we can ask of ourselves as well as others is to assume the best intentions, as opposed to assuming ill will. And just reminding our loved ones that we may mess up more than we used to, but it's not because we have any new ill will towards anyone, that it's still coming from a place of goodwill, and we are doing our level best, but it's reverting back to some maybe automatic responses that we don't control as well anymore, or some learned behaviors that weren't healthy at the time. And sometimes that's all we have to draw upon, because the other neural connections are kind of shot. So I think just reminding people of, we're not trying to manipulate. We're not trying to be acting the victim or dramatizing. We're just trying.
Well, and that's an interesting comment too, because a lot of times care partners will say, well, they're doing this to push my buttons, and people think it's intentional. And you're saying you feel that on your side too at times, like, are you just doing this to push my buttons now? And then in terms of Brian's response, that, he'd given two examples of responding nice and maybe with elevated tone of voice. is that may be something really difficult to change if that's if you've always kind of feuded and that's how you've communicated as a couple. Chances are that's going to be something really difficult to change, you know. And so I've not been in a relationship like that, but I have plenty of friends and family that I have seen, and that's just their normal go-to mode to respond. And so even if you approach it different, the other person may or may not be willing to, if that's how you've always communicated.
Well, I don't think it's a matter of the history. I think it's an in the moment kind of thing. Like if they have said that maybe 3 or 4 times, you know, in the last 15 minutes, then it kind of works at you. And not to be funny, but I don't remember what was said or how it was said 5 minutes ago or 10, 15 minutes ago. I'm reacting how I feel at that time, and maybe something back here is saying they just said that 15 minutes ago, but up here it's not registering. But I can't explain that, but it happens, and I try very, very hard for it not to happen, because the raising of the voice does nothing but makes the I use my favorite word now that I know what it means. It exacerbates the situation. So I like using big words, and I know what they mean now. So
Go ahead, True. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did. Oh, when I see the person, the tension going up, I don't understand what words are coming out of their mouth. Really, the words that are coming out are not registering. What I'm hearing is the tone of voice. And so I have gotten to where I try to remember to say, okay, wait a minute. I'm going to start off with using the tone of voice that you're using on me so that you can see what that feels like. And then we'll continue. Can I do that? And it seems to help.
Mm-hmm. So you're mirroring back to them what they are. And a lot of times care partners don't even know that how they're reacting. I mean, they're kind of shocked because they're just trying to get through the day, and you know, they're not in the moment. They're just trying to get through from one moment to the next. And so I think that that's a really interesting way and a really normal way to approach things.
I think kind of like Mary, I'm a natural teacher, and my communication goes to teaching. If I can teach them to better communicate, then we can have a two-way street here.
Yeah. I'm going to go to Bob, and then I want to go up to Scott and Michael and Harry.
One of the big difficulties for me is the process as you progress in this communication, and the toxic relationship gets more and more and more toxic. At that moment, it's very difficult then to do what we're saying, because we've developed this pattern that's so strong, and we're convinced that, you know, the anger's there. It's very important early on in the diagnosis that we practice this, that we practice doing all these wonderful suggestions that we're having right now, to practice them, because it's going to get worse. You know, so I just want to make that point. This whole thing so far for me is so powerful. So.
Good. I'm going to throw in one thing. When we were on the cruise, Lori Shear did some sign language, and that is something somebody in earlier stages could learn too, to help communicate later on down the road. So just a thought for that. Scott, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, communication is key. I mean, that's how we get through the life and through the world and through our relationships. I mean, this is the most important. thing between two people, a caregiver and our, if you don't have that, I mean, that's like you said with the sign language and, when we're nonverbal, and I have a hard time always I guess catching a lot of those cues, that Chandra may be saying to me or wanting me to do. If you just look at it like in the world today, with the political climate, the world climate that we have, I mean, you get passionate because it's you. And sometimes we don't have that filter to be able to calm it down or, express ourselves in a way that maybe be appropriate. I mean, I try to keep that calm thing, and sometimes it's like, I had enough.
Mhm.
Not hearing me, but if we can be reminded and remind each other, look, we care about each other. We're trying to work through this, and bring it back down to a level where it's reasonable. I think that's what needs to be done. I mean, one of the two people needs to be able to say, okay, wait, let's stop for a second and let's start over. Or,
Perfect.
I guess because it is so key. I mean, yeah, I'm not organizing my thoughts. Some people have sundowners. I have early morning. So I get better as the day goes, but
You're doing just fine.
But we just need to take it down. I mean, we need to respect each other. I mean, we love we care about each other. That's why we're here, right?
Yeah. Good. Thank you, Scott. Michael, how about you?
Well, first I'd like to ask a question.
Mhm.
How many people here have actually sat down with their caregivers and actually had a real deep conversation about this subject? I'm
Okay.
actually surprised, because I think we all talk about this, and I can tell you, I talk about it a lot. I can tell you, I've never had this deep discussion with mine. And I think that's part of the problem. It's hard to have that conversation. I mean, I preach it, but I don't do it. And it's not an easy task to do. And, I just recently realized, how much I really don't pick up on cues. My wife recently had broken her foot, as some of you may know. And there's things that had happened around the house that she really needed help. And they just went right over my head. I never picked up on the cues. And then sometimes she'll say, I'll offer to do something, and she'll go, well, I could have used you a little while ago. And well, she must have said something or gave me some kind of cue that I didn't pick up on. So I think part of the problem is, you just don't pick up on those cues anymore. And I've just gotten to the point it is what it is. There's just no way I'm going to be able to change that. I mean, as much as I want to change that, I can't change it. This is what I've become with. So I think part of the problem is you have to accept what you are and what you've become. I mean, so many of us are saying here, you can train yourself. Well, I don't think I could train myself. I mean, as much as I want to train and become better, I don't think that's possible. There may be some things I may be able to do a little bit better if I really spend a lot of time and effort on. But as I tell people, is it really worth that time to spend, your whole entire day trying to think about how to make yourself better? I mean, I'll go crazy just doing that. I mean, hey, I got better things to do. So I just kind of go with the flow, I guess, and let things go where they go. I just can't let my life try to figure out on how I can be doing better, and to try to think about all the issues that I'm doing poor at.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that that's a great point, because you don't want to get in a trap of trying to, because I would feel, if it was me, I would end up feeling some resentment if all I was doing was trying to be better or be something that maybe I felt inside I couldn't be for somebody else. That would be really, really frustrating, and it would probably get me more angry. I know True had a comment, and then Bob and Brian. True?
If you're not seeing cues with your love of systems and figuring out things, Michael, I'm sure there's a system that if you sit down with the other person, you can figure out a system that would work with your personality, and you've still got abilities that are very high. Some are very low, and probably a lot are very low, just like me. But my visual processing is still very high. So find out what for you is still very high and work with that. Figure out a system that would enable you to get the cues if that is important in your relationship, because the relationship is very important.
Michael? Sorry.
I hear you, and I got to tell you, it's sometimes really very aggravating to know you missed a cue from somebody or they say something, but I got to tell you, even when I do, I still don't understand it, even sometimes when they explain it to me. And it's like, I walk away like, I don't understand what they're talking about, even when they're explaining it to me. So it's like even more frustrating then when I spend that time trying to figure out what the hell I missed or why am I not getting this. So to me, I just rather not even think about that. I hear what you're saying. Maybe I'm different than you. I don't know. But I just don't want to focus on all that and get more aggravated trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. So you don't think it's worth having a conversation with your care partner to say, I'm not understanding, I missed that cue, and this is that maybe we can figure out why. Maybe I have to be able to see you, versus be in another room. Just like when people talk from another room, a lot of times people say they're not picking up on that. That they need to look at their lips because they're reading lips more. Or even when someone's trying to explain something, do you tell them then that you're not getting it, or do you kind of go, yeah, I get it, just to get out of the conversation and kind of slither away?
That's exactly what I do.
Okay.
It's like jokes, Lori. I mean, you go to places where they're making jokes. I have no clue what they're joking about. Mm-hmm. I am totally clueless. And I used to love all these jokes and all. But it's like, what the hell are they saying? It's like everybody's laughing around me, but I'm like clueless to what they're all laughing at. I mean, I just don't get it. And I don't know how you can change that. I really don't. I mean, to me, that's a skill deficit that I have lost. Mm-hmm. And it's not something that I think I can rebuild. And, it goes back to the thing that Lori had said. You can spend a lot of time to learn sign language. And if you practice it every day, you can end up learning that. Well, I don't want to waste my time every damn day to do that. I got better things to do every day. Mm-hmm. So it's like, do you concentrate on the things that you can't do and try to improve on them every single day just to make one skill better? Meanwhile, you're going to lose other skills because you're concentrating so hard on the other skills.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something I think everybody every day has to weigh out, and what makes them comfortable and feel purposeful and things. So I appreciate your honesty. Bob, and then Brian, and then Mary.
I just want to talk a little bit about Michael was saying the importance of starting to communicate effectively and carefully early on and repeating that over and over and over. Because if you go too long without doing that, then it becomes almost impossible. So my theory, and it might only be a theory, if we work on a step by step, remind, it might work. I'm not sure.
Ryan?
Yeah. Now, this may be my Alzheimer's kicking in, or I might just be softening up a little bit. But I know this might come as a shock. But I do agree with Michael on some of the things he said. But Michael, here's one for you. You should get this. A horse walked into a bar, and the bartender said, "Hey, why the long face?" Get it? Long face horse. It was a joke. Okay, never mind. All right. I digress. Anyway.
I'm totally lost. Believe me, Brian. I'm way past gone.
All right, we're gonna move on. But I agree. What I meant about the part that I agree with is that sometimes when you're having a conversation, or when you try to have a conversation to explain what's bothering you, it does escalate, and you wind up doing it time after time after time, and then about the 10th time something clicks and you say, wait a minute, I think I did this yesterday and it had the same result. So you just kind of give in and just kind of accept it for what it is, because of the fact that it just goes back to the rules. I mean, there are no rules. There's guidelines that you can follow, but as you know, with a guideline, you can go outside the lines. It's like coloring. You can either stay right inside or you can be creative and go outside. If you go outside the guidelines, it's okay at certain times, because not everything fits inside your little box. But with me, and that's, I was agreeing with you on that, is that it escalates. So you should spend your time more constructively on things that you can make a difference in doing. As far as I don't know, but just concentrate on being more constructive in what you're doing. But if it always works out to be the same result, it's not worth doing over and over and over again. So
Okay.
there you go.
Gonna go up to Mary, and then we gotta hear from Harry.
I think one of the things that I'm hearing is that from our perspective, whether or not we want to be able to do something is, of course, very important to us. The negotiated meeting that we have with our care partners, if you have one, or with anybody, in fact, it doesn't necessarily have to be the person who's with you most of the time, is if it's important to you or important to the other person, that there be an improvement in the communication, then both parties have to agree to find a common ground. And given the rights of people with disabilities to have access to support, to have a better quality of life, to improve our well-being, we should have access to counselors or therapists, or even occupational or job counselors. I don't just necessarily mean psychotherapists. Someone who can help mediate will sometimes say, okay, well, this is what person A is saying, this is what person B is saying, and in fact, you guys aren't really hearing what each other's saying. This is what I'm, from a third party, hearing what everyone's saying. And do you think if we did something that might enhance or ameliorate the situation as opposed to exacerbating the bad part. I'm using some big words for Brian just because.
Thank you, Mary.
Yeah. But it has to be what each person wants. If one if one person wants to learn how to learn sign language, then that's great. Then that's fine. Certainly, it shouldn't be imposed, and no one should feel that their time is being wasted. But if, as True said, the relationship is important, then you do whatever it takes, whether it's learning sign language or learning to draw with a crayon or hold up a sign that says stop, and the other sign says, remember, I come from a good place. I have no ill will towards you. I'm just really having a hard time right now. Whatever the cue is, something has to be agreed upon. And in a lot of relationships, they have learned these cues. And sometimes it actually happens, I heard, in these extreme relationships where there's lots of dangerous things that happen. There's a safe cue. And whatever that cue is, it means seriously, you have to stop. Mm-hmm. So I just agree with several of you who were saying there has to be a way to stop the momentum of the anger or misunderstanding.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about that before, and I think it's, you know, something a lot of people don't have is kind of that just one word phrase that's saying you're pushing me to my limit right now. You know, and maybe it's just a simple word like break. We just need a break from this right now, you know, to help. Harry, what are your thoughts?
Oh boy. I think this is a typical conversation on communication. It's too academic. We make communication too complicated, and it's not. How do we train a dog? Now, a dog can't talk, but we're very good at communicating with the dog. Okay, first of all, we have to get the dog's attention. We have to make that bond. Once we make that bond, we can train a dog. If we don't get the bond, we know today's not the day to do that. It's the same way with our kids. How many of us said to our kids, look at me when I'm talking to you? Okay? Now, we don't even think, back in those days, we didn't even think why we said that. But the reason why we said that is, look at me, so we can get this bond, so we can communicate.
Sure.
And body language. We have to learn body language. You know, we started to talk about this before we started recording, and I think it is so important when you communicate with somebody with dementia. Now, I've been living with dementia for 13 years, but I'm capable of communicating with almost anybody. Okay, the first thing we have to learn is listen. We don't have to talk when we communicate. Everybody wants to talk, but that's not communicating, that's talking. You know, you're not going to learn anything about that. You have to listen. Read the other person's body language. If I look into somebody's eyes, it's almost looking into the soul. You could tell their feelings. You could tell their emotions. And it takes practice. But every mother has that skill. A mother can look at their child and sense something is wrong. But over the years, they lose that. They lose that concept, and you have to get it back. Okay, I have to be able to look at somebody so I can feel what they're feeling. Now, once I feel what they're feeling, then the conversation can start. Okay, if I'm talking to somebody that's angry, I know we didn't make a connection. So no matter what is said, isn't going to be heard. So it's best just to back away from that conversation. And it's the same thing with their care partners. If we try to talk to them about something, and if they're too busy about, oh my God, I got all this work to do before Christmas, you know, we didn't make that bond. We didn't make that connection. So no matter what we say, we could talk for half an hour, but nothing's being said. Keep it simple. You know, don't make it complicated. Don't analyze every conversation. You know, what am I doing wrong? Well, I'm not doing anything wrong. Maybe I just didn't make a connection. You know, read the feelings.
But anybody have any comments on Harry's comments? What I liked about what you said, Harry, was to me it really gets down to the feelings and being able to process those, because we react to it's the feelings through the communications that we react to, good, bad, or ugly. You know, if somebody makes us happy, you know, we might give them a hug and a kiss. And, you know, if someone makes us mad, you know, we might strike out or be verbally abusive. But it's really our feelings and how comfortable we are in that situation, you know, that our reactions are projected. And again, sometimes we can control that and sometimes we can't. Brian?
You know, for those of you that know me, I kind of use humor quite often because I would much rather laugh than cry. And you know, if you do use humor in the correct way, where it's not harmful, I think you get a better response from people than you do if you just, you know, stating facts and so forth. When I give my presentations, I always insert humor into a conversation, because I guess it humanizes everything, everyone, and kind of brings a little levity. And when Harry was talking, he started talking about his dog, and I had to mute my microphone, because as he was talking about having conversations with a dog, my little dog next to me started snoring. So I didn't want the snoring to come across the microphone. But you know, but I agree with what he was talking about, is that sometimes you have to pick and choose the moment as to how you communicate and what you communicate, because it's not always going to be, in your mind, it might be the perfect time, but it may not be received as being the perfect time to have that conversation. The problem with, I'll just say me, is that I don't know the difference. Because I think that every time I want to say something, it is the perfect time. But because I no longer have, sometimes I don't have the capability of knowing when is a wrong or right time. So I really appreciate what you said, Harry, because it does, it kind of resonated with the dog, because that makes all the sense of the world.
Harry, and then down to Bob.
The one bad thing about humor, Brian, is it's a shield. It hides your emotions. Now, I'm going to use the example of Robin Williams. He was probably the funniest man I ever saw in my life, but he was struggling with life, and very few people that talked to him was able to sense that feeling. Okay, that's why my points of views are so different than other people, because I can, for some reason, I can sense that. I see these protective barriers we put up. Like with me, I'm only going to let you see what I want you to see. But the people that know me know how much I'm hurting inside. You know, I don't have to tell them. That's my form of communication.
And not everyone's good at using humor either, or comfortable with it. So that's another aspect. Bob?
I agree wholeheartedly with what Harry was saying. What I've learned is that as soon as I got the diagnosis, I was stigmatized. And being stigmatized, I immediately start to see people when they spoke to me from their emotional aspect rather than the words. And that was amazing to me. That I can't say everybody should be stigmatized, but I learned immediately from being stigmatized that anybody who comes to me with just words, without feeling right, with all this, I get very nervous, upset. Right? So what you're saying, Harry, is I'm agreeing with you 100% on how you're approaching it.
Hang on till I write that down. Somebody agreed with me 100%.
I'm going to say 98%, okay?
Brian, you had a thought?
Yeah, you know, I always use humor, you know, all my life, and it could have been where I was masking something. I don't really know. But when I first got diagnosed, I remember sending out an email to my close friends, and one of the people that wrote me back, his name was Guy, not your Guy, True, but Guy, who was in Oklahoma, and he sent me a picture of a T-shirt, and on the front of the T-shirt it said, "Roses are red, violets are blue. I have Alzheimer's. Cheese on toast." And when I saw that, I just thought that was the funniest thing that I've ever seen. And I remember people having a reaction to that, saying, "Oh my God, that's so mean. That's so cruel." I said, "No, it's not." I said, "It's funny." They are just trying to say, "Hey, okay, so you have Alzheimer's. Does that change the way that I'm going to treat you? No, I'm going to treat you just like I used to treat you before." And so it's my humor in when I insert humor, I'm just trying to be, I know I have issues of communicating things that that aren't so clear anymore. So sometimes when I forget what I was going to say, the humor kind of kicks in, and you know, and starts going. You know, as soon as I came on the screen, the first thing I noticed was Harry, and I said, you know, you look at Harry and you think, you know, he's, you know, like 4'3". He's really 12 feet tall. You should see him in person. I mean, he's a huge man, you know. But those are the things that they just come to my head. And I talk about them. I use them because, you know, I don't know why. It worked. And like Bob said, and like Harry said, it doesn't work with everyone.
Yeah.
I just had to find a way that works for me. And that seems to be able to get me through some tough times. And I relate to what he said about Robin Williams, you know, because that was a mask.
Okay, we're running towards the end here, so I'm going to go to Mary, True, and Bob.
What Brian said resonated, because one of the things that that you said was that this guy was going to still treat you the way he always treated you, and in a way, that's a great compliment. that this person is, first of all, recognizing that you are still you. And
Right.
there is an essential element of you that transcends any disease, any condition, any problem that you may have. And that's wonderful. At the same time, there is a change in sensitivity. There are subtle changes in all of us that we are very aware of, that people are only going to figure out when they interact with us and see how we maybe respond differently, like more quick to tear up, or more quick to get confused and frustrated. And so I'm kind of torn between wanting people to still treat me the way they used to, and then really wanting them to be kind of nicer to me. So it's a constant pull back and forth, and it's like you're almost driving bumper cars, and you have to push up against one rubber bumper before you can figure out where you have to come back to each time. So I get the importance of being still treated like we still are, but I can't take the verbal abuse that I used to take from academic colleagues, for example. I just can't take it as well as I used to. So it's hard. I'm sure it's hard on them.
Okay, I think I was next.
Yeah, true. Go ahead.
Need to continue using the advantage of our highest skills, like Brian's humor, but also be aware of the dangers inherent with using that tool, like using it for a shield and not actually communicating, because we might not get the cues for when it is being used inappropriately. But we need to continue using those skills that we've still really got, and we have that advantage. Not advantage. I think you know what I'm saying. I'm done.
Yeah, I just, it's also important that your friends feel comfortable continuing the humor. And it goes what I was saying earlier. I had a friend of mine that was saying, you know, Bob, you really have a memory problem. When are you going to pay me that $50 you owe me? I loved it.
Yeah.
That's where you get people that start gaslighting you.
That's right, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Mary, that was a really good analogy of the bumper cars, though. That was good.
Okay. Scott, any last minute comments from you?
I don't know. There's so many different things going on. This was a wonderful discussion. I think I learned a lot from Harry and Brian. Everybody. You know, I was kind of thinking, I don't know why this popped in my head, but you know, if I was a jerk before, I'm going to be a jerk now. You know, that part, you know, it's how we have to deal with people. You know, that's what communication really is. There's different kinds of cues, physical, you know, just a touch, you know, there's a lot of different ways to communicate. I liked Harry's analogy with the dog. And I guess really when it comes down to it is if we can keep a level head and continue to communicate, it should work out. I guess that's all. That's what I came to through this dialogue here today.
Great. Michael, how about you? And then we'll go to Harry, and that'll be a wrap.
I don't have anything.
Okay, Harry?
I think the best conversations I have is with my Italian friends. I got a video, a video call from them, and we believe in laughter yoga. we practiced laughter yoga. And I get a video chat from my friends. There might be 15, 20 people on the video chat, and we laugh for 1 minute. We don't say a word. We laugh for 1 minute, and I tell you, it's the best way to start a day. It's the best communications I have with anybody. Whatever fears I had during the night are gone. I feel good. And like I said, we didn't say a word.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank everyone again and just remind our audience too that, the reason that we do these is for you to share them. So please feel free to go ahead and use these if it's with your family, if it's a training session, whatever. You can reblog, repost, whatever. But our goal is to help educate, and so feel free to please pass this along or direct people to our other videos as well that can be found on Alzheimer's Speaks YouTube channel, or you can go to Alzheimer's Speaks and click on our initiatives and projects and then go to the tab for Dementia Chats, and you will see our other videos listed there. Thank you guys so much. As usual, you were wonderful, and I think this will be really, really helpful. So we'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.